Apparently there's been a shooting up here at the Conway High School.
All these kids.
I'm Lauren Hartnett, and today I'm the face of America.
I'm Pastor Gilman Rose, and today I am the face of America.
I'm Bri Micah Warner, and today I'm the face of America.
Peace, I'm Maj Toure, and today I'm the face of America.
I'm Josh Chaden, and today I'm the face of America.
As a victim of domestic violence, that's why I began to learn about protecting myself, and especially carrying a firearm and learning how to properly and safely use and handle one. So when another man tells me, I don't think you need to carry a gun, they've never been in my position, and most of them never have been or even maybe know somebody who has been. So for them to tell me that I don't need to carry one, they're not there. They're not me. They can fight off somebody their size. I can't fight off somebody who's twice my size.
I am Pastor Gilman Rose. I am the pastor of the historic Mount Zion Church of God 7-Day in East Flatbush, Brooklyn. I am the husband of Diamond Rose, the father of Gian and Joshua Monrose, and I'm the founding president of the 67th Precinct Clergy Council called the God Squad.
My name is Bri Micah Warner, and I say I'm a Jane of all trades and hopefully a master of a few of those. I've come from the entertainment world. I work on television and film as an actor, but in the recent years I've also started to work more in the law enforcement realm. I actually work part-time in law enforcement, and additionally I own a company that I do firearms training for women.
I'm Maj Toure, the founder of Black Guns Matter, a firearm safety and training organization based out of Philadelphia, and I'm a solutionary.
My first relationship with firearms was through hunting, was through recreational sports in the Midwest. We grew up in a rural community where hunting pheasants, deer hunting was a part of an annual tradition in my family. I personally have only ever shot small shotguns at clay pigeons and have never gone hunting, truly. I've used a BB gun, but I was called to action after seeing Gays Against Guns rise up in 2016 after the Pulse massacre in Orlando, Florida.
It's better to own a gun and not need it than need a gun and not own it. Hi folks, Don from Don's Guns. You know, it's getting dangerous out there. The criminals got guns. The honest people should have them, and they are not that expensive at Don's Guns. $119.99 for a .380 automatic, a .45 automatic, $189.99.
Firearms, gun violence is what I call the new epidemic in America. The ability to own a handgun legally or illegally is a fascination. There is more guns that we have in America than we have people. In inner cities and where I do most of my work, we find that guns are used for protection, guns are used to protect turf, guns are used to solve arguments, guns are used in domestic violence situations, guns are used for fun, and so there is just a high level of gun use in America, and the ranges are so vast and so wide as to why people use guns.
In America, it's a little taboo to talk about firearms, but especially in New York City. New York City, unfortunately, just based on kind of the rules, it is a very restrictive city. Unfortunately, in my viewpoint, it doesn't really allow for a lot of opportunity for self-defense. I see firearms as a tool. You know, I know that they get a very bad rap because the media likes to really sort of focus in on all the mass shootings and sort of like the more negative aspects of gun use, whereas the majority of Americans that do own firearms are actually very responsible, and especially even in New York City, surprisingly, you can actually get a pistol permit in the city. A lot of people don't know that.
Well, the Second Amendment defends, you know, American citizens away from, you know, running into a tyrannical situation because you have the means to defend your values. You have the means to defend your way of life, and that's not something that's outsourced to the government. That's something that in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, there were things placed in position to make sure that power remained in the hands of the people. And one of those very important, powerful tools being a firearm, you know, or having an arsenal, or having the means to defend what you believe. Because if you can't defend what you believe, it's nothing.
Gays Against Guns is an inclusive organization that supports all people. We encourage all LGBTQ people and their allies to get involved in the fight to reduce gun violence in America and end the gun violence chain of death in our country.
In Chicago, 17-year-old Janae Patterson's mother grieving.
And it took my baby away.
Her daughter, one of 14 people killed by gun violence this weekend in the Windy City.
This violence got to stop.
I just recently started a women's shooting club in Staten Island. And Staten Island's a little bit unique compared to the rest of New York City because we are that small town, especially my neighborhood. We've been there forever. So it's, the more I speak about it, the more I talk about it, the more I do interviews like this and put them out there on social media, it becomes less and less taboo. I'm also in a field where it's not that taboo to talk about firearms or self-defense. I work as a paramedic in New York City. So it's something that us as an emergency service are pretty familiar with. So the more I just get the message out there to anybody who's willing to listen, it becomes less and less taboo, especially with the politicians. I'm very active and very vocal with my local politicians, my state politicians, even my federal politicians, just because I want my voice to be heard. And I want other women and other Second Amendment supporters' voices to be heard as well.
I'm Brian Kemp. This is Jake, a young man interested in one of my daughters.
Yes, sir.
Jake asked why I was running for governor.
If you have a young person who grew up hunting wild animals and shooting, there's a different level of respect for guns. Guns in urban cities, in urban America, is used to kill and maim one another. That's the difference. And so I think that we should treat guns differently, even though I think that the gun law should be universal. However, I do think that guns in urban cities should be treated differently because of the culture within these two areas.
Gun violence disproportionately affects LGBT people in America. 40% of trans youth have actually attempted suicide. 92% of those individuals have actually tried to commit suicide with a gun before they're even able to rent a car legally in America, and that has to stop.
If I tell you, you know, you have the right to defend your life if need be and the freedom to exist. If you're trying to tell me that I shouldn't have that right or that you don't want that right, one, you're probably crazy to say you don't want to defend your own life should you need, you know, should the need arise. And two, if you're saying that I shouldn't, and let's say you're just a politician, but you have an armed security detail, it's the height of a contradiction. And I can't allow your deception or your contradictions to prevent my life, liberty, and my pursuit of happiness. And if you're you know, serious or hell-bent on infringing on that, the question that I would ask you is, what level of violence are you able to employ or withstand to stop me from having my right to exist?
So having come from a very quote-unquote liberal environment, especially in entertainment, it was like the dirty secret that no one wanted to talk about. I mean, people were very apprehensive to talk about their interest in use of firearms. Maybe they own some at home, and they didn't want to bring it up because they almost felt like they were going to be ostracized if they did. And I would definitely encourage those that maybe are on the left that perhaps do feel differently about Second Amendment issues, that really are proponents of them, are supporters of them, to be more vocal. I know that it's not the popular voice in that community, but like for myself, I still work very actively in entertainment, and I'm probably the most outspoken, open person about my use of firearms, my training, how I hope to empower and encourage other, you know, people, women, you know, especially women. I mean, I think that's always been my niche, but you know, men and women alike, it doesn't matter. But I definitely think that being a little bit of a renegade in a very left sort of centered world with entertainment, I actually like being that opposite voice, and I definitely encourage liberals to get more active and to go out and to vote and to try to encourage others, because I do feel like what I'm finding is that a lot of my more liberal friends that perhaps maybe weren't necessarily against guns but never really had an opinion either way, they have sort of started to come to me because they see the world is changing and they see that violence and terrorism, acts of terrorism are becoming more and more prevalent, and they want to be able to defend themselves, and they're actually very sheepishly coming to me to ask my opinion on perhaps what firearm they should look into, how to get training. And I think that's a great start, and I'm definitely encouraging of that, and I hope people like that just start to become more open about their pursuit, because I do think it will naturally encourage others to inquire and to realize that most gun owners, 99.9% of them, are very law-abiding citizens.
I, like most Americans, believe that the Second Amendment guarantees an individual the right to bear arms. I think we recognize the traditions of gun ownership that passed on from generation to generation, that hunting and shooting are part of a cherished national heritage. But I also believe that a lot of gun owners would agree that AK-47s belong in the hands of soldiers, not in the hands of criminals.
I've had guns since I was 15, most of the time unlawfully, based on these current very anti-human rights rules. I never shot anyone in a robbery just because. I never, turned into this evil person just because I had a firearm, and I think that's most Americans. We're not going outside looking for trouble. So in knowing that, and that being my lived experience, seeing other people catch, possession charges, not because they did something wrong with the firearm, just the mere act of having it makes you a felon. Seeing that, and some of those guys just were missing information. They didn't know that you just had to fill out some paperwork, be patient, and wait a little bit, which is still an infringement on your human right, especially people that live in rough neighborhoods, like Chicago, like New Orleans, like St. Louis, where we're going next. So we knew that we had information that we could give to keep some of these people out of prison, and also expose some of those contradictions. At the end of every law, there's a person with a firearm threatening you with violence for not complying with that law. It's the boilerplate, what happens if you deny a law. You don't pay your parking tickets. If they come to try to take your car and you don't want them to take your car, the police come with a gun. So in seeing that, we knew that we could keep a lot of people out of jail while exposing the contradiction, while creating a political base to overturn a ton of these unconstitutional laws or unconstitutional infringements. So we started something that has had a major impact. My job is to remove a lot of the money that comes into people's hands and their coffers off of the sweat and toil and tyranny of American people. If you're a lawyer, if you're a judge, if you're a prison owner, you should be very afraid of me. My job is to take money and food off of your plate, because you're making American citizens criminals just by proxy, by the stroke of a pen. It's not right, and it's not going to continue anymore, and that's why we started this organization.
I think that the United States is unique in its fascination with guns because we have a revolutionary past. It's written into our Constitution that we have the right to bear arms. It has literally been a part of the fabric of our country since its founding. On top of that, we have a culture that's built upon that fascination and the glamorization of guns in all forms of media, including Hollywood, video games, and just to your basic Second Amendment rights, to a person's interest in hunting. It's just woven through the fabric of the United States of America.
Somebody could come into my school and just shoot me out of nowhere. And guess what? My death, God forbid, if that happens, the government won't care.
Public safety is a shared responsibility. And we as the clergy members in the God Squad, we take public safety seriously. We take the issue of gun violence seriously. Therefore, our response is serious to the problem of gun violence. And so we work directly in coalition with the NYPD to make sure that their strategies match up with the needs of our community. We know for sure that you can't police your way out of the gun violence. We can't arrest our way out of the gun violence. We know that it takes a community effort to reduce gun violence. And so across the city, across the country, and in New York City in particular, we know for sure that as public safety is a shared responsibility, we have to make sure that the faith community has their role and their responsibility, that the gun violence interrupters have their role and responsibility, that law enforcement as well have their role and their responsibility. But we must do it in sequence, we must do it in order, we must collaborate, and we must be able to share from one another. And so I think that the work that we do with the NYPD is paramount and important to reducing the violence that we see in our communities.
Women definitely are sort of a category, not to say that women are a weaker breed, but I do say that, you know, look, I'm a 5'2", 100-pound woman. You know, I am realistic in what would be expected of me if I came on to encounter someone that was attacking me that was much larger. I mean, there are certain physiological differences that make me less able to defend myself maybe physically. And so for me, the use of firearms is a really important component to any woman's, you know, self-defense. And not every woman wants to go out and get a firearm. Maybe they're not comfortable with that. But I definitely encourage, and I do feel like women in particular are at a major advantage if they are able to use a firearm or any kind of self-defense tool. But, you know, usually with firearms, the reason why I always say that is probably the one that I would lead with versus like a knife or even pepper spray is that, you know, you want to create distance. And a lot of times when the other option is, oh, we'll just, you know, get a knife or get a taser or whatnot, basically that tool requires your opponent to be in very close proximity with you. And so in that case, you're already at a disadvantage, because if you're a smaller framed woman against a much larger adversary, being that close to anybody, you're already at a deficit. So if you have a firearm that allows you to create a safe distance and still be able to protect yourself. And to me, a really effective use of a firearm is not actually needing to fire it, but it is the presentation of one that hopefully will allow that person that is attacking you or threatening you to disperse, and hopefully the situation dissolves itself without actually needing to fire the gun.
Every American citizen has the right to bear arms in our Constitution. I also do believe that it is contingent upon local communities. It's incumbent upon local communities to look to the gun violence epidemic and how it affects their own personal communities. Personally, I do not feel like we should make distinctions between someone's rights in an urban community and a more rural community. Everyone has the same rights in America.
Safety is paramount. A firearm is an inanimate object. You'd have to break a bunch of the rules of firearm safety in order to have a negligent discharge. So giving people an understanding of civics, their responsibilities that come along with those rights, as well as the responsibility of safety when handling firearms properly. Proper security, proper storage, proper trigger discipline, proper muzzle discipline. These are things that are keystones of our movement. And when you have those things hand in hand, you become very, very powerful.
We feel like at Gays Against Guns that we should be looking to upgrade background checks through legislation that's currently moving through the House of Representatives and hopefully the Senate. We also believe that local leaders should be encouraging people to practice safer gun laws, to teach their children that even though there is this current gun violence epidemic, that they can end it in their own communities.
On June 27, 2012, my 14-year-old brother, Akil Christopher, was shot while walking home from a high school graduation party at his friend's house. My brother survived for 14 days and died on his 15th birthday, July 10th, 2012.
My son also dabbles in Fortnite, Call of Duty, and those, you know, games like that. And one of the things that I try to help him to understand that there's a difference between a game and reality. We have to keep that line open. We have to keep that bridge, well, not that bridge at all, sorry, we have to build a wall, quote unquote, between reality and gaming. And so what you find that even in California, some state that there was big men who plays these games who had a dispute, and they actually kill individuals within the tournament of these type of games. So there needs to be a difference between teaching our young people about what's game and what's reality. As long as you cross those two paths, that you can't tell the difference between the game and the reality, we're going to continue to have problems and issues with that game.
We can end the NRA's stranglehold on our public officials by hitting the streets, by advocating that they end their relationship with elected leaders through their donations. We can shine a light on their practices of pushing the false narrative of the good guy with a gun. We can protest outside their headquarters like we've been doing through direct activism, through our social media efforts, through partnering with other gun violence prevention groups, and getting the word out there that they're phony, essentially. They've been selling the American people and their own membership a false bill of lies, essentially. And it's time to end the NRA. We say at Gays Against Guns that it's time for the NRA to sashay away, and we mean it. It's time for them to disband. It's time for them to get their dirty money out of our politics. It's time to get their hands out of the pockets of American citizens by looking to them to fund their political action.
I've thought about running for office. I'm hesitant about that because the level of hypocrisy is at an all-time high. And I know what a lot of you politicians are doing. And I'd probably catch an assault charge for smacking one of you because the contradiction is so blatant. You make rules that you make yourself exempt from. And that's not, you're a public servant. I probably would be a very good politician because the work that I'm doing right now is all public service, you know. But I think I like being free, you know, in order to give a lot of those guys problems without any of the restrictions that they have. Right now I'm a free radical. I'm a solutionary. I can do anything wherever I want. I don't have the same restrictions. I'm like Blade, the Daywalker.
So stop and frisk was a pass in our city that I think, for the most part, was not necessary. And I can't understand, I guess, why they would want to do it. Trying to find a way to reduce the violence, but we know for sure that, you know, black and brown individuals, young black men especially, was stop and frisk for no reason, just for being black. That is unconstitutional, and that is not American values. I am happy that it's gone. We see now that the city is safer without stop and frisk than when we had stop and frisk. Why? Because we put our resources into the right thing. We put our resources into social services. We put our resources into basketball clinics. We put our resources in after-school programs. We look at the zip codes where we have a high level of crime and violence. And we fund nonprofit organizations to do the work to help with young people, to deal with those individuals who are high risk to be shot or high risk to be shooters. And once you put the resources in those areas, we see that the NYPD has changed their model, changed their philosophy to community policing because they understand that they cannot do anything without the help of the community.
Where's the accountability? I never hear people saying these individuals out here in the streets need to stop pulling the trigger.
We've followed Chicago's struggle against gun violence for years on World News. The city working to seize illegal guns.
Historically, gun control came right after emancipation, right after, you know, African Americans fought for their liberation. During emancipation, right after that, the first rules to prevent people of color in America from having firearms was right after that. That's why, you know, we say all of the time, all gun control is racist. It's been a very effective means to stop, you know, people from having those means, as stated in the Second Amendment, having a non-alienable right to defend their life, liberty, and their pursuit of happiness. And those rules were created based out of fear, based out of bigotry, bias, and racism. And that's, you know, Everything else after that is subsidiary of the parent company of racism when it comes to gun control. All of those laws are infringements, period.
My service weapon was an M4 assault rifle.
My service weapon was an M16. It's basically the same. You know what? It is the same as the AR-15.
Same weapon that's killed hundreds of people in the deadliest mass shootings in America.
The Constitution has always been the foundation of America, and politics have always tried to build on top of that. In the last couple of years, we've noticed such a divide between Democrats, Republican, liberals, conservatives, left versus right, and more the Constitution keeps getting thrown in. And we understand that, you know, they want somebody to blame for what's happening. They want something to blame for what's happening in schools and what's happening in urban areas, but so they cling to that, to the Second Amendment, and want to blame that because that's, to them, that's what's allowing this to happen. And we don't believe that. We strongly believe that more faith in the Constitution and specifically the Second Amendment is what is going to stop these tragedies and these shootings from happening. But we can't do that when we can't even sit down and have a conversation about where to start from.